If he already has someone, a wife, a girlfriend, and yet he still seeks you, stop and ask yourself this: what does a man like that really want? Because it's not what you think. He's not chasing you because you're the one. He's chasing you because you make him feel something he's lost in himself. But that feeling isn't love, it's escape. When he already has someone but still reaches for you, it's not love, it's validation. He's chasing the feeling of being desired, not a real connection. You become his escape from routine, a spark to feed his ego. But here's the catch: that attention has an expiration date. When reality calls him back, you're left wondering what changed. The truth is, you were never the problem. You were just his temporary escape from himself. If you're still here, listen closely. This could save you heartbreak. A man who truly respects you won't keep you in the shadows. The moment you stop being his escape, he's forced to face himself. That's your power. Your silence speaks louder than attention ever could. You're not meant to be a secret or a backup. You deserve a man who shows up fully, not halfway, not sometimes, but completely. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever noticed a man who already has a wife or a girlfriend still hanging around you, sending little messages, dropping compliments, making you feel like he might want something more? You pause, and a voice inside you whispers, if he already has someone and still seeks your attention, this is what's really happening. In that moment, you feel confused, maybe a bit flattered, but also uneasy. Because deep down, you know this isn't just harmless attention, it's a red flag wrapped in charm. Today, I want to show you what's really going on inside his mind. Why does a man who's already committed still go after another woman? What are the signs that a man in a relationship is actually interested in you? What does it say about him? And most importantly, what does it demand from you? Because this isn't just about love, it's about power, self-worth, and emotional strength. So let's dive in. Imagine this: a man walks into a room, and even though his wife or girlfriend is waiting for him at home, his eyes are scanning the room for new energy, new attention, a spark that reminds him he's still attractive, still in control. You catch that look, that small smile that lingers a little too long, and suddenly you're wondering, why me? Why now? Why is he reaching out when he already has someone else? At first it feels nice. Every woman likes to feel seen and appreciated, but here's the danger. You're not being seen for who you really are. You're being used as a reflection of his fragile ego. Men who cheat usually aren't doing it for love or real connection. They're trying to silence that quiet fear inside that says they're not enough. They want proof they're still wanted. It's all about the ego, and it works like this. The more attention he gets, the more powerful he feels. But it never lasts. It's like filling a broken cup. No matter how much water you pour, it never stays full. And when you step into that pattern, you risk being pulled into the same emptiness. Your energy, the very light that makes you warm, kind, and magnetic, gets drained trying to comfort his insecurity. Have you ever noticed what happens when you start feeding someone's ego instead of their soul? You start to lose yourself. You begin to ask questions you never thought you would. Am I special? Am I the one who can fix him? Or am I just another name on his list of emotional distractions? This is where the narcissistic pattern begins. He puts himself in control, acting like his attention is rare and valuable. But if you look closer, it's just a trick to keep you orbiting around him. If he truly felt confident in himself, he wouldn't need to spread pieces of his attention across several women. A woman who knows her worth starts to see this not as romance, but as a cry for validation, and that's a cry you were never meant to answer. Here's the twist. When you stop playing that game, when you don't feed his ego, something shifts. He may become restless, maybe even angry, because you're no longer following the script. But what if that resistance is actually your freedom? What if saying no to this pattern is the first step in healing yourself, in breaking away from the old pain where your value was tied to someone else's approval? This trap isn't only about him, it's also about how women have been taught to see attention as a prize, even when it's testing their boundaries, and realizing that truth can be uncomfortable because it makes you look not just at him, but at yourself. Picture a late-night talk. the kind where he leans a bit too close, his voice soft, saying things like how misunderstood he feels, how his partner doesn't get him anymore. He paints himself as the victim, the lonely one. For a moment you feel sympathy, maybe even connection, because empathy is your nature. But stop right there. Have you noticed that when a man feels unhappy in his relationship, instead of working to fix it, he often looks for emotional comfort somewhere else? That's not strength, that's escape. And escape can look tempting until you realize it's just running away from responsibility. This is how emotional affairs begin, not with physical contact, but with quiet words, with secrets, with shared pain. It feels deep and private, almost spiritual. But what's really happening underneath is emotional theft. He's creating a bond with you using energy that belongs in his relationship. Without realizing it, you become the bridge between his unhappiness and his distraction. Now ask yourself, what happens to you when you take that role? You start to carry his weight, his frustrations, his inner mess, and slowly you mistake his need for closeness. This is one of the most dangerous emotional traps, confusing need with love. When a man opens up about how broken his relationship feels, it might seem like honesty, but often it's a way to make you feel important. And once you buy into that story, your kindness, your empathy, your gentle nature, all become the tools he uses to avoid facing his own issues. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it leaves marks. Healing begins when you see how easily emotional safety can be twisted. He tells you his pain, and suddenly you think you're the only one who can help him. But ask yourself, does he really want to heal or just hide? A woman who knows her worth doesn't mistake someone's sadness for depth. She knows that unhappiness doesn't justify pulling someone else into emotional chaos. Yet so many women fall into this, not because they're weak, but because their empathy is real, their heart is open. And that's what makes this so hard. You're standing in the middle of compassion and caution, trying to listen to your heart without losing yourself. His eyes say, "You understand me." But your deeper wisdom says, if he can't face his truth where he is, why would he face it with me? Every woman remembers that moment. A man who already has someone looks at her like she's the answer to everything he's missing. He says things like, "You're different. You get me in ways no one else does," and it stirs something inside you. Not just because of the words, but because we all want to feel seen, valued, and unique. That's the power of feeling special. But pause. If he already has someone and still seeks you, is it really about you or about the thrill of something new? The truth is, newness itself can be addictive. Science even shows that the brain releases a rush of dopamine when something feels new. It gives that instant high, that spark of excitement. But what's built on novelty often fades once the shine wears off. And when it does, you're left realizing that what he wanted wasn't you. It was the feeling you gave him, the reflection of himself he saw in your eyes. So the next time a man in a relationship looks your way and you feel that pull, stop and breathe. Remember that attention is not affection, connection is not commitment, and validation is not love. The real power is in your ability to see the difference, to step back and to protect your peace before you get pulled into a story that was never yours to begin with. When something carries mystery, when it hasn't been conquered yet, a man trapped in this cycle isn't really chasing you. He's chasing the thrill of something untouched. The feminine energy he's drawn to in you isn't truly about your soul or who you are. It's about how you make him feel about himself. You become the mirror reflecting back his fantasy of being alive again, wanted again, free from the dull routine of his daily life. But what happens to a mirror when it's looked into too many times? It loses its shine. It becomes ordinary. This is one of the cruelest narcissistic patterns. You're given the part of the muse only to realize later that you were never the story itself, just the spark that reignited his ego. And isn't that dangerous? To give your heart to a man who is addicted to the what if, but afraid to face the what is. The illusion of being special pulls you in because it touches your own hidden emotions. It wakes up the part of you still healing from old wounds, the part that was ignored, underestimated, or made to feel replaceable. Suddenly, his attention feels like justice. But here's the real question. Is it truly healing, or is it another trap disguised as affection? The more you fall into this illusion, the more you risk mixing fantasy with real closeness. And real closeness, true intimacy, needs honesty, presence, and emotional safety. Without those, all you have is an act. And if he's acting with you now, in secret, think carefully. What role will you be given in his next act? The illusion of specialness doesn't just confuse your judgment of him, it also clouds how you see yourself, because it tempts you to settle for moments borrowed from someone else's life, when what you really want is something lasting. Even when you see this clearly, that fantasy might still tug at your heart, whispering, "But what if I really am the exception?" Picture a child who grows up thinking that rules can bend, that promises can be changed, that consequences are always negotiable. That child becomes an adult who believes commitment is for other people, not for me. This is the hidden psychology of men who cheat. They live as if the rules binding everyone else don't fully apply to them. And when you meet a man with that energy, it feels exciting. There's something magnetic, almost daring about someone who crosses lines so easily. But what looks like courage is often just entitlement in disguise. This pattern shows up in small, sneaky ways. He messages you late at night, knowing perfectly well he shouldn't. He flirts openly, then laughs it off, saying, "I'm just being friendly." And if you ever call him out, he might twist it, making you feel like you're imagining things, saying you're reading too much into it or being too serious. See how those triggers work? You start doubting yourself. You start questioning your instincts, wondering if you're being too strict, too cautious, or too sensitive. This is how emotional safety starts to erode, slowly, quietly. It's the soft breaking down of your ability to trust what you feel. But here's the haunting question. What kind of man needs to live constantly on the edge, hiding, chasing, risking? Usually, it's the man who can't handle stillness. Stillness forces reflection. Reflection demands responsibility, and responsibility means facing the truth he's been running from. Instead, he looks for outside excitement, the chase of another woman, the thrill of forbidden messages, the rush of being desired where he shouldn't be. And in that moment, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be someone's escape, or do you want to be someone's peace? For a woman who values herself, the cost of stepping into this role is heavy. Because once you attach yourself to a man driven by entitlement, you tie your worth to his moods and impulses. Healing often begins the moment you see how easily your kindness, your compassion, your deep need for connection can be twisted by someone who mistakes attention for love. And then you're left with this raw truth. If he feels above the rules now, what rules will he break later? If he's willing to betray someone else's trust for the excitement of your presence, what would stop him from betraying you? Maybe the hardest truth of all is this: the very quality that makes him so attractive at first, that boldness, that willingness to break rules, that thrill, is the same quality that will leave you anxious, uncertain, and doubting yourself in the end. And doesn't that make you wonder, if breaking rules is how something begins, how steady can it really be? There's a particular silence that takes over your mind when you start seeing the signs. His eyes linger longer than they should. He sends messages late at night, just thinking about you. He finds excuses to reach out, to ask about small things in your day, details that don't truly matter to him but keep him connected to your attention. And you start asking yourself, is this real? Does he actually like me? Or am I imagining it? This is how the fantasy begins. The what if starts whispering softly in your thoughts. What if he truly sees me? What if I am the one he's been waiting for? That thought is powerful, even addictive. It feels like a possibility, but possibility can be the most dangerous illusion of all. Our brains crave newness. The excitement of something unexplored gives a rush of dopamine that can trick us into believing it's love. Here's the truth about a man who already has someone but still wants you. It's rarely about you. It's about the thrill of something forbidden. He's not falling in love. He's addicted to the adrenaline of what's unknown, the idea of what could be, not the responsibility of what is. That fantasy is powerful because it asks nothing of him. It lets him imagine freely, without real effort or commitment. He can build any story he wants around you because it never has to exist in the light. But what does that do to you? You become the screen where he projects his frustrations, his needs, his loneliness, and slowly you start to confuse that projection with intimacy. It's one of the quietest, most deceptive psychological traps. He doesn't see you as yourself. He sees you as a character in his escape story. And if you're not careful, you start acting out that story with him, feeding the illusion with your time, your attention, your warmth. This is where feminine energy gets misused. Your gift of empathy, your desire to nurture, becomes fuel for his fantasy instead of building your own reality. Ask yourself, if the story is being built in the dark, what happens when the light comes on? Fantasies fall apart under the weight of real life. The man who sends you those longing messages might not be the man who shows up proudly beside you in daylight, holding your hand for the world to see. And yet the fantasy keeps calling because it touches your deepest longing, to be chosen, to be seen, to be loved. That longing isn't weakness, it's human, but it must be protected, because if you hand it to someone living in a dream, you risk waking up in a nightmare that isn't yours. And that single thought makes you question how many times in life you've mistaken being wanted for being valued. It begins so quietly. A chat over coffee, a late night message, a casual sharing of struggles about life and relationships. At first it feels harmless, even comforting. You tell yourself, we're just talking, we're just friends. But little by little, without even noticing, the bond grows deeper. He starts depending on you more than he depends on her. He shares secrets no one else knows, and before you realize it, you've become the keeper of his emotional world. This is how emotional affairs with married men begin. Softly, slowly, like water leaking through small cracks, until the entire foundation starts to break. The danger doesn't lie in the words, but in the shift of emotional energy. Every time he turns to you instead of his partner, he redirects his intimacy, and you, often without even realizing, become the safe place where he hides. That can feel powerful. It feels like connection, but it's not real connection. It's borrowed intimacy. You're stepping into a place that doesn't belong to you, and in doing so, you take on his unmet needs. But here's the truth that cuts deep. Unmet needs are not love. They are dependency, and dependency disguised as love becomes a prison. Think about what's happening psychologically. You, with your empathy and warmth, feel chosen, trusted, even special because he opens up to you. That awakens your caring side, your need to bond, your belief that maybe you can help him heal. But healing done in secret is never real healing. It's enabling. You're not fixing his wounds. You're protecting him from the responsibility of facing them. And in the process, you risk breaking your own heart. This is how emotional safety crumbles, not in a dramatic betrayal, but through 1,000 quiet moments of misplaced intimacy until you can't even tell where you stand anymore. You start waiting for his texts, needing his attention, measuring your worth by how much he reaches out. And when he pulls away, as he always does, you're left with the emptiness of a story that was never truly yours. A woman who values herself must ask, am I being loved, or am I being used as an escape? Because when you step into that spiral, you're not creating a future. You're holding space for his avoidance. And that realization hits hard, doesn't it? Because it shows that the same softness that makes you beautiful can also make you vulnerable to men who haven't learned to honor it. Then comes the hard question. How do you protect that softness without shutting your heart completely? There's a strange clarity that arrives when you see this pattern for what it is. A man with a wife or girlfriend pursues you, and suddenly you're facing a mirror you didn't expect. You begin to see both him and yourself. His actions, yes, but also your reactions. Why does his attention affect you so deeply? Why does his interest feel so thrilling? It's easy to say, because he made me feel wanted, but beneath that lies a deeper truth. Sometimes, attention from someone unavailable feels exciting because it protects you from true vulnerability. It lets you feel chosen without risking the full exposure that real love requires. This mirror is powerful. It forces you to see your own past wounds. If you've experienced neglect or betrayal, this kind of secret connection can trigger those old patterns, the ones where love had to be earned or fought for. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with him, you're facing your younger self, the one who just wanted to be chosen, no matter the cost. That's where real healing begins. When you realize that what you call chemistry may sometimes be a reflection of your old pain. Every woman carries two sides within her, the child who longed for unconditional love and the wise woman who knows she deserves it. When a taken man flatters you, he speaks to that inner child with his promises and secrecy. But if you pause, you'll hear another voice inside, the wiser one, saying, "This isn't love. This is repetition. This isn't intimacy. This is replaying the same wound." And in that moment, you have a choice. You can either repeat the cycle or finally break it. The mirror doesn't lie. It won't let you place all the blame on him. It makes you ask, what part of me is drawn to this dynamic? That question can sting, but it's also the beginning of your freedom. Because once you see clearly, you understand you were never powerless. You always had the power to choose differently. That realization leaves you standing at a turning point, looking at him, but also looking at yourself, wondering, if I change my response, how much of my life could change? The hardest truth about a man who seeks women while already taken is this: the pattern you see now will be the same pattern you'll inherit later. If he cheats once, why would that suddenly stop when it's your turn? That truth hurts, but it's also what sets you free. At first, freedom feels like loss. It feels like giving up a story that once gave you excitement, validation, or hope. But if you look deeper, you'll see it was never really your story. It was his escape. Men who cheat aren't seeking love. They're seeking thrill, validation, and distraction from themselves. And none of that is about you. It's about their unhealed hunger. When you step into that space, you risk becoming just another temporary solution, another chapter in a book that will never be finished. So ask yourself, do you want to be someone's excitement, or do you want to be someone's peace? The answer defines the life you're building. When you understand this truth, your entire view shifts. You realize that accepting half love isn't romantic, it's self-betrayal. That chasing secret validation isn't passion. It's a slow fading of your worth. And though it hurts, this awakening brings out the high-value woman within you. She's the woman who knows that real love doesn't come wrapped in lies. The woman who will no longer mistake intensity for intimacy or secrecy for meaning. Yet, even as you awaken, part of you may resist. Because letting go doesn't only mean losing him, it means facing the parts of yourself that thought this was all you deserved. That's the most difficult step, but also the most freeing.